An Extra Knife at Dinner, a Gabrielle Ibrahim mystery. An audio series by Patricia Asedegbega. Episode 3. I know that it's near the Casey Club, but I can't remember the name of the street or number. Just drive there, and hopefully I'll be able to direct you better. Donatus nodded, without raising an eyebrow at Gabrielle's strange request. He had been working for her since she'd got back 2 weeks earlier from the international fashion shows. Uki had conducted the interviews and picked him. So far she knew little about the quiet middle-aged man, only that he did not seem prone to idle chatter. Unlike the previous chauffeur, Dennis, who would even tell her about football matches between foreign teams, not in the least bit daunted by her silence. Gabrielle had zero interest in football outside the Olympics, when she would be cheering for Nigeria had the team qualified. Gabrielle had only been to Funke's house once, and it hadn't been a visit. She had waited outside for Antonia, who had kept her waiting for 20 minutes after having called her because her car had broken down. In those minutes, Gabrielle had had ample time to study the gate. She tried to conjure an image of that day as Donatus drove around, probably thinking she had lost her mind. Then she remembered something. Wait! There has to be a supermarket nearby. 2 young girls went past the car I was in that day, and about 10 minutes later they came back with bags, she said. There was a logo on them, but I didn't catch the name. One of the girls was eating ice cream. I remember that much. If we find it, they might know Funke if she's a regular. Worth a try, at least. Donatus said he would ask around. He slowed down as the car approached a man on foot. Rolling down the window, he asked some questions and drove in the direction that had been given. "Should I go in and inquire about the lady you're looking for?" Donatus asked, as Gabrielle scrolled down the many images on her phone. Reaching into her bag, she got out some money. "I'll go. I have a photograph of her that could be helpful." "It's really hot today. I'll get us a drink." Being a paying customer made it easier to get the shop assistant to help, and soon after Gabrielle and Donatus found themselves in front of the familiar blue gate. The security guard asked her to wait outside, and a few minutes later a teenager appeared and looked up at her inquiringly. "Good morning. Is Funke available?" Gabrielle asked. "She's not at home," the girl replied. "Do you know when she'll be back?" "In the evening. She's at the shop," the girl said. "She's in Mum's bad books. You see, she's crashed Mum's brand new car, so she's keeping well out of sight and making herself useful." She grinned, seemingly not having an issue with giving out such information to a stranger. Gabrielle asked where the store was located and, after thanking the teenager, left with Donatus to find it. It was a home decor shop located inside a mall. Gabrielle raised an eyebrow at some of the pieces as they were quite difficult to look at. Who would display those in their home and pay for them? She felt sorry for people who received them as gifts. Funke was speaking to a couple standing near a bookshelf, and Gabrielle decided to look around while she waited for her to finish. A few minutes later, Funke escorted the couple to a uniformed young man, and Gabrielle walked up to her. One could not call the look Funke threw her way as one of delight. Gabrielle debated whether to beat around the bush or get straight to the point. She decided to take the latter approach. "As you can see for yourself, I'm still alive. I want to know why you asked such a strange question the other day at the clinic." "Me?" Funke asked. "I have no idea what you're talking about. If you'll excuse me, I'm in the middle of a very busy work schedule." Funke made a move to walk away, and Gabrielle started to lose patience. She was only there because she could not stop jumping to conclusions in her head. Most of the thoughts that plagued her, she desperately wanted to be mistaken about. "Funke, I didn't come all the way here to play a guessing game with you. The officer who took my statement asked that I contact him if I remember something out of the ordinary. My getting stabbed and you asking if I was dead could be considered something worth looking into. Now that I know where to find you, I'll just give him a call." Gabrielle turned and started walking away, hoping that the mention of the police would be enough to get something out of her. "It was Antonia," Funke exclaimed. "I told her not to, but she decided to get you out of the way permanently. That was why I stopped coming to your house. We had a huge fight, and she just kept talking over and over about her plan. It had become an obsession. When I heard what had happened, I assumed she was behind it, and I just needed to know if her plan had worked. Antonia sent those thieves, I'm sure of it. She wants you dead. Gabrielle took a step back. It felt like someone had slapped her. She looked at Funke's face, searching to see if this was all a very tasteless joke. But there was only fear in the young woman's eyes. Without another word, Gabrielle turned again and walked out of the shop. She needed to think carefully about what her next step would be. It's not here, Gabrielle said to herself as she stared at the pile of clothes that she had just removed from the laundry basket. Everything she had worn in the last few days was there, except the white dress. Maybe someone did the laundry with only white clothes. Maybe that's why it's the only missing item. Gabrielle rushed downstairs to speak to Esther and Pauline, the two members of staff who came to do the cleaning and laundry. Sunday, the cook, had been given a few days off as Gabrielle's parents would not be around for at least 2 more weeks. The man had asked if he could go to the village to bring his mother to Lagos, as she had not been feeling very well. "Pauline, did you take a white dress from my laundry basket?" Gabrielle asked the tall, slim, middle-aged woman who was cleaning the kitchen counter. "No, madam. I only went into your room to clean it," Pauline replied. "I was going to ask you today. Madam Antonia gave me some clothes to take to the dry cleaners and some others to wash, and there was space for more. Is there a problem?" She stared at Gabrielle as she looked into the washing machine and took out some clothes. Her dress was not there either. "Let me see what Antonia gave you for the dry cleaners." The woman left the room and returned a moment later with 3 dresses. One of them was white, probably what Antonia had worn to the party, but Gabrielle's was not there. "Where's Esther?" Gabrielle asked, and noticed that Pauline seemed hesitant to answer. Gabrielle's mother had complained that Esther tended to disappear without notice, or a credible excuse on her return. She watched Pauline impatiently. "Madam, she had to rush off to school. She was called because her son started throwing up, but she'll be back very soon. I'm sure you can do without her today. If her son isn't feeling well, then she should be with him. When you tell her that she can take the rest of the day off, ask her if she saw my dress." Pauline nodded, the relief evident on her face. Gabrielle rushed back up the stairs. Antonia's room was unlocked. She looked in the laundry basket, which was empty, so she set about searching the rest of the room for her dress. It had definitely not developed legs and walked out of her room on its own. Half an hour later, Gabrielle sat shocked and staring into space, trying to wrap her head around what she had just read. "What are you doing in my room?" a furious Antonia asked, bringing her out of her thoughts. "I came looking for this." Gabrielle held up her stained white dress, and Antonia took a step back, not taking her eyes off it for a second. "I resisted believing someone had tried to stab me when the doctor told me. But it was you! Antonia, you have never bothered to hide the animosity everything about me has provoked in you, and to a point I excused it. Life hasn't been easy for you, living with 2 parents engrossed in the complicated webs they'd woven around their lives. Then, after your mother's arrest, I convinced myself that your bad attitude was normal under the circumstances. I tried, I really did, but this is something I refuse to handle on my own. I'm going to turn this in. I'm calling the police." No, it wasn't me that stabbed you." Antonia made a lunge for the dress, but Gabrielle, fast on her feet, moved away, holding her phone up. "Don't come any closer. I've started dialing, and if you take one more step, I will do so this very minute," Gabrielle warned. Both women stared at each other for a moment. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. "Gabrielle, I can explain. Just put the phone down." "I'll stay here, I promise." "I didn't try to kill you. It must have been someone else." Antonia spoke quickly, not taking her eyes off the phone. The phone. Is that going to be your defence? How are you going to explain these? I found them when I was looking for my dress. How can you possibly explain away the words in these letters? Letters in which your mother is urging you from prison to do away with me and my mother. I guess their trip saved her and left me as your main target. Oh, and don't bother trying to grab them. I photographed them and sent them to various email accounts I have, along with a statement that says in the event of my sudden death, you are to be investigated. So no, my not calling the police this very second is because I'm thinking of how to break the news to our father first. But I will not allow you to escape justice. This time I won't turn a blind eye. You've gone too far, Antonia. Antonia studied her for a moment. There was fear in her eyes, but Gabrielle refused to be swayed and steeled herself. She would have to make some really difficult decisions and calls. Look, you've read the letters. You know what my mother wanted me to do, Antonia began. I'm sure you've seen that there were people she said she could get me in touch with. Have I hated you all my life? Yes, and even more now. I'm not denying it. So I did contact someone. 6 months ago, at the party Father gave your mother, I just snapped. Seeing you all celebrate despite all that had been taken away from me, and I made the call. I'd been asking around, and I was given the contact of someone that could take care of things without leaving a trace. Gabrielle suddenly felt dizzy and sat down on the edge of the bed. It had to be a bad dream from which she would wake up at any point. How could Antonia have gone so far? She shook her head, trying to return back to the present as Antonia went on speaking. I started thinking and saw that it was murder we were talking about, so I told this person to keep the money I'd paid, but not to go through with it. That was why I was at the party the other evening. I went to look around and see if there was anyone that looked suspicious, because I didn't know who I was communicating with. I even paid a waitress, so she'd be the only one to fill your glass. Gabrielle realised she had missed quite a bit of the explanation. Wait, what are you talking about? It wasn't poison. I was stabbed. And who did you pay to get rid of me? I don't know who the person was. We only communicated through WhatsApp, and poison was going to be administered at the party. Before you went away for your shows, I heard Sandra tell you that there was no way you'd escape going. That was the evening we planned for it to happen. Look, you can see for yourself. I sent messages to call the whole thing off and made numerous calls to the number, but they were never picked up. Antonia held out her phone, and Gabrielle read the exchange in horror before finally looking up at her half-sister. 10 million naira. That's what my life's worth to you. This person didn't reply to your last messages, Antonia. There's no need to look for any more explanations. Gabrielle got up and slowly made her way to the door. Where are you going? Antonia asked, her voice trembling. I need to clear my head. I'll be taking your mobile with me, Antonia. If you leave this house before I get back, you'll be arrested. I hope you understand the gravity of the situation. This isn't like that time when you left me that huge bill to pay at that restaurant, or when you used my credit card for online shopping. This is much, much worse. Antonia bit her lip and nodded, and Gabrielle left the room. Doctor, look, it's Miss Ibrahim. Gabrielle, having lost track of time and just emerged from the church, looked up at the mention of her name. It was Nurse Bissy and Dr. Agechi. They both walked towards her. Good evening, Doctor. Nurse Bissy. You two are the last people I'd expect to find here, Gabrielle said in surprise. House call. Father Jerome refuses to come into the clinic, and if I let anything happen to him, my mother will never forgive me. The man replied, and Gabrielle smiled in acknowledgement. The priest was always on the move. In her time in Lagos, she hadn't seen him take a single day off. from saying Mass, except when he had taken a week off to see his mother. But she was sure that he had been working in the parish over there as well. "Oh, there's my husband. I have to go," the nurse said. "We're off to meet the newest member of the family. His sister just had a baby." "I'll see you tomorrow, Doctor." "Miss Ibrahim, how's your wound?" "It's fine, thank you. I barely remember that it's there." "Have a good night," Gabrielle replied as the woman smiled at them and hurried away to the waiting car. "Did you drive, or can I drop you off?" "It's quite late," the man offered. Gabrielle heard the words, but her brain didn't seem to want to cooperate and give an answer. He touched her arm and looked at her with some concern. "I'm sorry, I've had a shock this evening and I'm miles away," she apologized. "Here, let's sit on the stairs for a moment," he said. "You can tell me or not, but you do look shaken up." She felt herself walking and sitting down and sensed the man doing the same. They remained in silence for a few moments. "I come here sometimes," she said eventually. "It's not my parish, but I knew there'd be exposition today. It's my place of peace. Just Jesus and me in the Blessed Sacrament. I'll take your presence as an answer to my prayers. I can't talk about this to anyone else, and I need to vent. No one else's reactions will be helpful at this moment." Gabrielle looked at Dr. Agechi. He was staring straight ahead, probably thinking that she was crazy or about to divulge a female problem that would be of no interest to him. Whilst in the church, she had read all the chat history between Antonia and the unnamed person again. There was no denying that it had not been a dream, and she needed someone to help put in order the thoughts bombarding her mind. "My mother says the same thing. She comes here a lot too," Chuck said. Gabrielle handed him the phone and waited in silence as he read through it. A few minutes later he whistled, eyes wide in shock. "That's my sister's. I found out today that she paid someone to get rid of me. She says she changed her mind, and it does say so in the messages, but there's no reply from the other person. If it weren't for the stab wound, I'd be none the wiser. The story about us came out in the papers. I don't know if you heard about it. In summary, her mother kept mine captive for many years. We believed her dead. Antonia's mother's in jail now. I also found these letters. Take a look at them." There was another silence as the man scrolled through the photos on her mobile and read through the letters. "I remember my mother talking about it at breakfast one morning," the doctor said after a while. "She was shocked as to how far people could go to get what they wanted. I'm afraid that I paid little attention. Was probably rushing off somewhere, or my mind was on a patient. Must have been very difficult for you all. But this is a very serious criminal offence. It's evident that her mother's still planning to harm you all. Even being locked away hasn't been an impediment. You need to report this to the police." "That was my first instinct, but whilst I was in church I just kept thinking of our childhoods," Gabrielle said. "How it damaged us in different ways, and that Antonia says it wasn't her. You read the message. The intent was to poison me. What if this was someone else's work?" "Exactly how many people are after you?" Dr. Agechi asked. "Look, you seem to be the kind of person willing to believe the best of others. That's probably how we should all be. You seem torn between believing her and not. But reading the messages she's exchanged with the criminal she hired, it really doesn't seem like something she decided to do on a whim, and then changed her mind immediately after writing the message. She'd been messaging this person for quite some time. Your sister sent various photographs of you and told this person where you could be found. They chose the party because it was easy to get to you. It couldn't have been done in your house because Antonia would be the obvious suspect, but at a party full of people." Gabrielle breathed in and out. She just felt lost at that moment and really wanted to cry. Like she had been doing before the Blessed Sacrament, but too many years of holding back her emotions prevented her from doing it in front of the doctor. She looked at the man as he went back to reading the messages. Sandra was right. He was very good-looking, tall, his skin the tone of caramel. There was a hardness about him, though, like a shield. Probably like the one she put up herself. One that would probably prevent people from really getting to know him. "I don't even know your first name," Gabrielle said, trying to steady herself, looking for something less tumultuous to talk about. He frowned at her, as if not really understanding the question. "Okechuku, but most people call me Chooks, except my mother. She calls me by my middle name, Joseph, or Joe. She stopped using my first name when I was in my teens. She has a great love for St. Joseph and believes his intercession will help keep me on the right path." Gabrielle smiled at his words. A great saint, not a word of his recorded, yet he transmitted so much through silence. The man looked at her and chuckled. "Oh, my mother would really like you. Now, back to this. You do know that you can't just sweep this under the carpet. I get that Antonia changed her mind, but at best she needs help. The way she handles conflict is extremely dangerous. And then look, the person she's chatting with is a killer. He or she has done this before and will do it again. You need to go to the police. This person must be prevented from circulating freely in society." "You're right, but if Antonia isn't responsible for this particular attack, jail's not the place for her," Gabrielle replied. "I need to find out what happened that day at the party. I can't keep her locked up at home whilst I do that, but I just have the strong feeling that going to jail will push her over the edge. Reading her mother's letters would give anyone an insight into the kind of control she still exerts over her. I hope that when the time comes, a good lawyer can use that to plead for a lighter sentence. On the other hand, if my father finds out about this, he'll disown her completely. Things have been quite strained between them since all this was discovered about her mother, Deborah. It really isn't as simple as it seems. Sandra's the best lawyer I know, and I hope she'll agree to defend her when the time comes. There's no love lost between them, but if a deal can be struck, she's the one to do it." "Joseph, I hope you don't mind if I call you that too. I need a bit of time to absorb all of this and plan what to do." The man shook his head. "I think you're in denial and underestimating everything. First of all, what your half-sister did, and I have to stress this because you're not getting it, is a very serious criminal offence. We don't know who she was in contact with, but that person has enough material to cause serious harm. I don't think he or she will go to the police because the person would be incriminating themselves. What if that person decides to complete the task to get the rest of the money? Or resorts to blackmail? This plan of yours is incredibly dangerous." Gabrielle listened in silence as all he had said went through her mind. The idea that the person was still in business and collecting money from others who wanted to get rid of someone also bothered her. But then there was Antonia to consider. Gabrielle's mother believed that with the proper attention, the harm Deborah had done could be undone. Gabrielle had been sceptical, and she didn't sense that the younger woman had any desire to become a functional part of the family. But something was stopping her from just giving up. The messages she had read did show a change of heart, especially the last ones that were the most desperate, though it had also occurred to her that they had been written on purpose in the event that Antonia was found out. It was all so confusing. "The last thing I want to do is to endanger anyone else, but I still need to protect Antonia, because even though she doesn't accept us, we're all she has," she said. "Maybe if she stays somewhere for a time, away from all this, I can find out who this person is. They probably came to the party to finish the job and it didn't go to plan. If there was someone I could speak to without making a formal complaint, keeping Antonia's name out of it. Everything's just so overwhelming." To stay up to date with Patricia Asedegbega's work, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.